There was a time when Rick Harrison's face was as familiar to Americans as the golden arches of McDonald's or the ticking of a grandfather clock, the smirk, the bald head, the glasses resting low on his nose as he examined an old coin, a Civil War musket or a signed album from some long-forgotten rock band. He was the oracle of the pawn shop, the pawn king from a modest family-run shop tucked away in Las Vegas. He had risen to national fame. The show Pawn Stars didn't just entertain, it educated, enthralled, and offered a peek into the hidden relics of America's past. It was Americana polished into gold. People saw Rick as part historian, part businessman, part everyman philosopher. He had an opinion about everything and a price for most of it. So when the world woke up one morning to a blurry silent video clip showing Rick in a prison cell rocking back and forth like a ghost clinging to scraps of memory, the collective response was disbelief. It wasn't supposed to end this way. The footage spread like wildfire, first on obscure internet forums, then TikTok, Telegram, Reddit, YouTube, and every other platform capable of carrying the weight of a viral tragedy. In the video, Rick Harrison looked unrecognizable, emaciated, disheveled, his trademark glasses gone, his eyes hollow, his skin waxing and pale. He sat curled in the corner of a decaying cell, clutching a faded photograph, one that, upon close inspection, seemed to be of his old pawn shop. There was no audio, only the faint sound of the cameras, static, and the ghost-like silence of the footage. Yet captions were added by self-proclaimed lip readers. They were never victims, he allegedly said in a whisper so quiet it chilled the spine. Some thought it was a confession, others saw it as a fragment of madness, but everyone agreed something had gone terribly wrong. To truly understand the horror of that image, you had to rewind decades back to the beginning, back to Rick's story before he became a television icon. Rick Harrison was born in 1965 in Lexington, North Carolina. He suffered from epilepsy as a child, which kept him isolated, away from school, away from most other children. He turned inward, into books, into relics, into history. When the Yao family eventually moved west to San Diego, then to Las Vegas, Rick carried his obsession with him. He opened the gold and silver pawn shop with his father, Richard Benjamin Harrison, in the late 80s. Business was modest at first. Pawn shops aren't glamorous, they're places of desperation, quick money, and second chances. But Rick saw something else, opportunity. He had an eye for objects, but more than that, he had an instinct for stories. A rusty knife wasn't just a tool, it was a weapon from a forgotten war. A dusty painting wasn't just art, it was the thread of a tale lost to time. Rick pitched his vision for a reality show, for years rejected again and again, until one day the History Channel said yes. Pawn Stars became a cultural behemoth. People came for the oddities and stayed for the personalities. The show had charm, humor, conflict, and knowledge. Rick stood at the center, a savvy broker of both goods and ideas. His shop became a pilgrimage site. Fans gathered outside hoping to catch a glimpse of him, to get a photo and autograph a word. He was no longer just a businessman, he was American folklore in a living body. But all legends cast shadows as Rick grew more successful. Rumors began to swirl, questions about the authenticity of certain items, stories of employees being fired under suspicious circumstances, lawsuits filed and quietly settled. Then came the financial discrepancies, quiet audits, disappearing documents. Then came the raid in 2019. A storage unit linked to one of Rick's shell companies was raided by federal agents. Inside they discovered not just counterfeit memorabilia, faked autographs, forged medals, altered antiques, but something much darker: human remains. Bones, skulls, even a braided scalp sealed in a glass jar. The public reeled. Rick was arrested soon after cameras caught the moment outside his pawn shop in broad daylight. As tourists looked on, Rick didn't fight. He simply raised his hands and whispered, "I've been sold." It was surreal. The man, who had traded stories and goods, now stood accused of trafficking and stolen artifacts, laundering money, and tampering with evidence tied to cold cases, and, worst of all, illegal possession of human remains. Then came the trial, held in a high-security courtroom in Las Vegas. It became the media circus of the decade. Testimony after testimony painted a chilling portrait. Rick hadn't just collected historical artifacts, he'd created a secret archive of horrors. His journal, Artifacts of the Forgotten, became the centerpiece of the prosecution. In it, Rick wrote about history as something alive, something buried, something that needed to be collected. History doesn't just live in books, he wrote, it lives in dust, in bones, in things no one wants to remember. In his mind, he wasn't committing crimes, he was preserving legacy. Former employees testified to strange sounds in the basement of the pawn shop, moaning, clinking metal. Some recalled Rick vanishing for hours, sometimes days. A cameraman said Rick once whispered, "Make it sparkle no matter what." Whenever an item's origin was questionable, forensic evidence linked Rick to the alteration of numerous items. Aired on Pawn Stars. An 18th century map was traced back to a dollar store replica. A Civil War saber was actually a movie prop, but nothing hit harder than the bones. Of forensic anthropologists described skulls engraved with phrases like "truth has a face." One was mounted like a hunting trophy. A bundle of human teeth was found wrapped in an American flag behind a false wall. In the shop, every revelation felt more surreal than the last, and Rick said nothing when asked to address the court. He refused. He simply stared into the void. Not once did he cry, not once did he flinch. The jury found him guilty on all charges. The judge handed down a life sentence without parole, calling him a man who rewrote history with blood and greed. And yet, even as he disappeared behind bars, the story wasn't over. That's when the footage surfaced. Inside prison, Rick was held in solitary confinement. Reports described inhumane conditions, food tampered with sedatives, and meals. Deep fake videos of his son sent to torment him. Inmates were allegedly instructed to mentally wear him down, whether fact or fiction. The footage confirmed one thing: Rick Harrison was broken, a hollow figure, mumbling into darkness. The man who once charmed America had become its ghost. Social media turned it into a battleground. Some demanded he be treated humanely despite the horror of his crimes. Others believed he deserved every second of torment. The History Channel wiped Pawn Stars from its catalog. Corey Harrison was seen once by paparazzi, offering only 2 words: no comment. Rick's name became a cautionary tale. The Pawn King had fallen not in flames but in silence. A man consumed by his obsession with legacy had become a forgotten relic. Himself now, he sits alone holding a photo of the place where it all began. No fans, no fame, just the dust of history settling around him. Generated with https://comb.ai